All right, let's talk some Eagles football with our next guest. Zach Berman does a tremendous job covering the Eagles for The Athletic and, of course, has covered the Birds for a number of years. He's also the author of a book out about last season's Super Bowl championship, which I guess, Zach, we could say 2 more weeks that the Eagles are the 13 more days. The Eagles are, they're not the defending champs. They are the reigning champs for 13 more days, right, Zach?
Yes, correct. Leap year. I appreciate that.
Yes, of course. The book is entitled Leap Year, and we encourage you to get it. So, Zach, let's get into it here. There's a lot of ways to go, but let's start with the coordinator search. What is your understanding of the latest? We know there's all sorts of people that no one's been hired. Some guys have gotten jobs elsewhere. What is the latest on the coordinator situation?
I would expect it to accelerate more this week, and I think the interesting thing that you saw at the end of last week was interviewing Declan Doyle, the Bears offensive coordinator, who does not have play calling experience, and I think that shows that they're not kind of rigid in that prerequisite there, and it is something to definitely
Wait, say
monitor.
That again? They're not going to what that prerequisite?
I think they're not rigid in.
Oh, man.
In the coach needs to have play calling experience,
Well,
right?
should they be,
if you're talking
Zach?
To Declan Doyle, if you're talking to Declan Doyle by nature of that, you're interested in someone who has not called plays before, right? So
isn't that a mistake if they're not holding firm on this concept? Like what we've seen is if you bring a guy in here who doesn't have that experience, it has a chance to fail miserably. It feels like I don't know, like this organization needs to put their foot down and do this the right way this time. Is it a mistake to bring in a guy who hasn't called plays?
I think it would create more unknowns. Whether it's a mistake, it depends. Are you hiring experience or are you hiring a mind, right? And I think that's if you think that it didn't work last year because of the lack of experience, then it would be a mistake. If you think that if the objective here is to evolve the offense and you're looking for a certain type of offensive mind, then it's a different conversation. I think at the start of the search, Mike McDaniel was the coach that they wanted. Obviously didn't go in that direction, but we'll see how this materializes. But the fact that they spoke to Doyle and have interest in Doyle shows that they're not rigid in that regard.
So, Zach, one thing that I think is bugging a lot of people, and it's certainly bugging me, is in a situation like this is what typically a fan wants. Identify who you want, go hire that person. Like, boom. Now, this one's a little complicated because the head coaching jobs were available, and so guys that could be OCs, could be head coaches, and there was sort of this waiting game and sort of cat and mouse across the league on some of these guys can be head coaches. That complicated it. But why do you think 3 weeks now after being eliminated, or 2 weeks I guess it's been, after being eliminated, why haven't they hired a coordinator yet?
It's a fair question. I think that they had a targeted approach at first and then a wide approach thereafter, right? And that I think after that initial, the initial target, if you will, there was no one there who there was that immediacy to hire, and in that case, it behooved them to see who's out there, to cast a wide net, to explore different minds. I think that's what it is. I think if Mike McDaniel was interested in this in the first week, or would have come here in the first week, I think they might have had an OC by now. But I mean, from my understanding, they acknowledged from the start that they might not land the big fish, if you will, and that this would be a wide net thereafter.
Because Zach, here's part of also what frustrates me. One, I wonder if they were actually prepared for it. Now, Sirianni's got a complicated job because in December and January he's preparing for the playoffs. And so it's not easy to check every box, but that's part of the job. And, it's certainly Howie's job, if he's especially going to be the one ultimately making a call, and a lot of people think it's his decision.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have to coach the team in December and January. He wasn't preparing them for a playoff game. A couple on the fringe roster moves on who's activated and not kind of stuff. But, I just feel, let me put it this way. The argument that after the 22 season, they were in a tough spot because they played in the Super Bowl and they don't get the pick of the litter. After the 24 season, they play in the Super Bowl, therefore they don't get the pick of the litter. I mean, there's only one game left. They're getting sort of close to not getting the pick of the litter.
Yeah, look,
were they ready?
Yeah, so the answer to that is yes. I do believe they were ready there. I don't believe they woke up the morning after the Niners game and said, all right, who are the OC candidates there? And I don't think in 22 and 24 the OC search was limited by the pick of the litter. I think they wanted internal promotions both years, coming off Super Bowl appearances. The one, and I'm not absolving them of anything here, but I think one dynamic that factored into things this year is I do think the Bills opening changed some things, number one,
Yeah.
and then I think the Titans, there was an industry expectation almost that the Titans were going to go with Matt Nagy, right? And then they hire Robert Saleh, and all of a sudden that offensive coordinator job opens up. But again, these are all reasons, not explanations. And the reality is, I don't think they went into this search with a ranked, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. I think they had a clear target at the start, and then thereafter they cast a wide net. And I actually don't think this has been that long of a period of time relative to searches. I don't think 2 weeks is limiting them in any way. If they needed to have a staff turnover here, that'd be one thing. If there was a particular coach who they were up against, that'd be another thing. But I mean, my understanding talking to people there is they don't mind the extended search.
Well, I the part that bothers me, Zach, is the last time. After they fired Brian Johnson and they were going outside to search, it took them 4 days. It took them 4 days to hire Kellen Moore, and that's with the search extending outside the organization. How many days are we looking at right now?
Yeah, so it took them
2 weeks?
12 days after the season back then. I hear what you're saying in terms of like when the announcement was for Brian Johnson. I mean, I think they knew they had an OC search at the end of that season. It took them 12 days. But to your point, we're beyond 12 days. 12 days would have been Friday of last week. We're talking Monday today. So, yeah, this is longer than the Kellen Moore situation. And I think the succinct answer to that, John, is they don't have a Kellen Moore right now who they want to hire.
Zach,
did they have a Kellen Moore and he was hired by the Los Angeles Chargers? I mean,
I won't disagree with you there. That if I said that earlier. If Mike McDaniel was interested in if Mike McDaniel wanted this job over the other jobs, then he'd be the OC right now. I don't think that's a stretch to say, but that's also the nature of these searches, and there are a lot of dynamics at play that ultimately made the Chargers job the one that he went to.
Zach Berman with us from The Athletic right now. Of course, we'll get to yesterday's games also, but right now a lot on the coordinator search. Zach, gut feeling, because I know there hasn't been reporting on this from you or anyone yet. This is one the Eagles are going to keep under lock and key, but gut feeling from a guess standpoint. Do you think Lurie and Howie had a conversation with Sirianni after the season that went something like this? Nick, love you. Appreciate what you've brought to the table. We do not want you as involved with the offense. Repeat, we do not want you as involved with the offense. We're going to hire a coordinator that basically does it instead of you doing it. Do you buy that happened or not?
I mean, semantics, I don't know if it was verbatim like that, but I can tell you I don't think anything happens in there without Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman involved in the conversation. And yeah, when you have the most expensive offense in the NFL and you're literally a middle of the pack offense, 19-20 offense, then yeah, I would imagine that's where the suggestion for offensive evolution came from. But whether it was specific to getting Nick's hands out of it, I don't know if that was the case. But I do think though that in that building they wanted this offense to improve and to evolve.
Is the power structure making it difficult to find the best coaches now? Should Howie and Jeffrey reconsider the power structure as it pertains to even Jeff Stoutland? Has his role as our great offensive run game coordinator, has that become a turnoff to some of the best coaches? I wondered if that was part of why Mike McDaniel wasn't in town, didn't even visit here in Philly.
Yeah, I actually don't think Stoutland's presence is a turnoff. I think there are some offensive schemes where the run game concepts might be different than what the Eagles have utilized here, and kind of what Jeff Stoutland works with. But I don't think. I mean, first off, A, you want Jeff Stoutland here, but B, I don't think that's keeping them from getting coaches. And no, nor do I think it's the organizational structure either. I think there's a lot of internal dynamics that coaches are considering. I mean, this is a high pressure job. I heard you guys talk last week about external pressure. I think there's a lot of internal pressure that you need to consider. I mean, this is not a cushy gig in the sense that you're here for, on this 3-year time horizon, and you install this and you pick this, this player and this player. No, you're coming in with this offense. And by the way, there's ambiguity about what this offense is going to look like personnel-wise when you talk about A.J. Brown and Lane Johnson. Sure. And the expectation is that you have a top offense from the start, not that it looks like this in 27 or 28, that it looks like this from September of next season. So I think there's a lot of internal pressure on you here, but it's also a job that's been a springboard to 3 head coaches in the past decade, and that's not something that should be dismissed either. For
sure. Yeah, 94 WIP HD1 Philadelphia. Zach Berman joins us here. We broadcast from the Tasty Cake studio. Hope you're all doing well out there, staying safe from the snow and hunkering down if you can. Go out only if you have to. Zach, the Jalen thing. So one of the big elements of this coordinator search is what the offense will look like and whether they will really have it evolve dramatically. If they try to do all sorts of different stuff with Jalen next year, things they haven't done much with him, do you think he'll take well to it and flourish, or not play very well with different types of offensive schemes?
It's a good question. I think he'd be willing to learn and adjust, but whether he'll flourish on that, I mean that's a fair question. And I think it's Jalen's, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Like, the credentials they're objective credentials. But if you're a coach who has an idea of wanting to play a certain way, you have to have an idea of how the quarterback fits into that structure. And I can't answer that question for you, without seeing Jalen function in an offense. And there are other quarterbacks who a coach might say he's a better fit for what I want to do. Now, I think that if you have Jalen Hurts at quarterback, that's a good place to start. But again, if you need to have a system built around Jalen as opposed to getting Jalen and building him around your system.
So do you have names in mind now for this? I guess now that we're entering like the 3rd week of the search, probably different names than when we started, but it does seem like the Jim Bob Cooter name is always sort of persisting in the background. The Brian Dable is persisting. What are the names that you're sort of gravitating toward now for our new play caller?
Yeah, so you mentioned Brian Dable. I mean, the latest I heard was that if he's not a head coach in Buffalo or Vegas, then the Titans are where he'll end up. Now, if that doesn't happen, I think he'd be attractive. But beyond that, I would pay attention to Declan Doyle. I mean, I know that he doesn't have the play calling experience, but I do think that there's a lot of respect there for the offensive mind around the league. That's something that you hear. Otherwise, we'll see if they expand the search to coaches who became available yesterday. When you look at the Rams staff or the Broncos staff, but the fact that they spoke to Doyle, what was it, Thursday of last week? I mean, that's definitely been on my radar, and I don't think that's something that should be dismissed. I did the show on WIP Wednesday night last week. Now, before Doyle got into the conversation, and when we spoke then, I said Matt Nagy would be a name to watch. But I would really pay close attention to Declan Doyle right now.
Interesting. Zach, final thing here. We spent a lot of time in the first 2 hours of the show talking about how yesterday's games relate to the Eagles and what stood out to us. What hit you the most watching those 6 hours of football as it relates to the Birds?
Well, in the second game, and I thought Tom Brady said it well, is the amount of layups you saw for the quarterback, right? And that's just not something you saw in this offense outside of the low red zone this year. And I think they need to find ways to get Jalen those layups. It can't look like such a chore to throw the football, right? And then the other part of it too is I think that Eagles fans and the Eagles organization should really view this year as a missed opportunity, because when there's a world that exists where the Eagles are playing Chicago in cold weather and in the snow last week, right? And I think if you look at the Buffalo game this year, you look at the Green Bay game, you look at the Detroit game, I think those are conditions that kind of favor the Eagles style of play. And then the Rams Seahawks game. It would have been 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of different factors there, and I think that when you watch that first game and you see how hard it is to play in inclement weather, that's something that could have been advantageous for the Eagles. But my big picture takeaway in that second game was just the amount of layups you saw, to use Tom Brady's expression, that the quarterback had, and the Eagles need to figure that out in their offense.
Totally agree. Zach, outstanding work, obviously, all year again, covering the Eagles for The Athletic.